Hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your
It's
day.
7 minutes after 8. We're on to the third hour of the Situation Room. How are you doing? Thank you very much for keeping it locked. And now we continue our conversation. We want to look next at social media, how this Gen Z movement has moved social media, just conversations from keyboard warriors to people who are just whiners to actually taking action. And we are joined by Mark Kaigwa. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Nendo. Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Happy to be here.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
That's the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Doesn't feel so hot as of now.
Of course it doesn't. You're here to help us understand and unpack things, right? You'll tell us a lot about Nendo and what you do. But before that, there's something we wanted to tell our previous guest that we hope to have, Denson Umari, in the last hour. And that's about the best health insurance in the region. What do you guess the largest insurance company in Kenya and East Africa?
The largest. Wow. Oof. I'm going to guess that it's not who you think it is, in that it's maybe a mobile solution or something where people don't even know.
Are you a politician?
No. Oh, gosh. So they answered the question. I was going to guess it's a telco or someone unexpected.
Not yet. Not yet.
Really? Okay.
It's still not yet.
It's a fairly analog company. Analog in the sense that it's been there for, it started off as an analog company. And for it to have grown to be the largest in the region, there's nothing Gen Z about it.
Oh.
Except perhaps the products that it offers.
Yes.
Gen Z. But in terms of its age, it's a Cro-Magnon. It's been there for quite a while. Yes.
There we go.
It's an old company.
Yes.
Okay. And City, tell him the name.
It's called Jubilee.
Okay.
You've heard of it.
Indeed, I have.
Yes. No, it's a polite sounding name, and so one may even assume it isn't big, but it is the biggest. But now Jubilee has done something to a thing. And the something they've done to a thing is they've looked at the population of Kenyans and they've said, you know, some of these products we have are good, but we could offer a little more. And that's what they've been doing. There are those who call it upping their game, okay? Trying to meet the needs of the client. Finding out what does the client actually need, and then saying, okay, this is what you said you needed, here, we present it to you. And there's a large array of facilities that are offered. From those who are young to those who, like myself, are clearly not in their first youth, and onwards. Yes.
And all those packages, very, very easy to subscribe. It's very easy to pay your premiums. You get 24/7 support. You get evacuation services. And the thing about health insurance, if you have a health insurance but you go to any facility and they tell you here to Jui, then it doesn't work for you. So they have at least 700 health facilities in Kenya where you can walk with your Jubilee Health insurance card and you'll get treated. I mean, don't say the biggest. What do I say?
That's what we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about. Okay? So what's the number to call?
0709 949 000.
0709 949 000.
Yes.
Somebody was saying that they'd called that number and it wasn't being picked. Just keep
Jubilee,
calling.
pick it up. Yes.
They will pick.
I like how you all know it by memory. I'm like, this, well, not to talk about Gen Z brains too early, but I like how that was instantly summoned and called upon with no counter checking, no hesitation.
Like that. Okay. So City will give you the day's proverb. You know the drill. You listen to the proverb. You give us your interpretation of the proverb. So this week he's decided, last week, this week, and he's even said even next week, he is doing island nations in Africa. This week you're in?
It's Cabo Verde, otherwise known as Cape Verde. That is if you're speaking in English.
Yes.
But it was a former Portuguese enclave. The proverb, listen carefully, and Eric, no giggling. The bat hangs upside down because of the words told to it by the sun. When I said Eric, I meant you as well.
Moi?
Eric is generic for both of you. The bat hangs upside down because of the words told to it by the sun.
My interpretation.
Yeah.
Your interpretation.
All right. Wow.
Not the interpretation you think we want to hear. Your interpretation.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. No amount of preparation could have prepared me for this one. I would assume to myself that the bat hangs during the daytime, and the words of the sunshine are the bright light, the pinching heat, and everything amongst the creature world that awakens. So the second the sun starts talking, the bat goes upside down.
What?
My goodness.
And this man is a poet.
Oh, I held a deep breath. I was like, let's see.
What? So what's the lesson here?
Okay.
Oh, the lesson of
Hang your butt upside down.
no.
Stop.
This is why you said to be quiet.
This is why he was asked to be
Okay,
quiet.
now I get it. Know the environment you thrive in, and know when it's time to leave the stage. The other one on the bat and the butt.
It's B-A-T. You know, I work with funny people.
Indeed.
As you can see. Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that interpretation. So tell us about Nendo. So you founded Nendo.
Yes.
What is Nendo?
Yeah, at Nendo, we're intensely curious about what people do with their mobile phones, social media, the internet. And we solve for that either through research, publications, interviews, surveys, studies, or marketing. So just helping change people's perception, behavior, sort of what marketers, for better and for us, call their trade. But within all of that, just still always curious about how these mobile phones in our pockets and purses have changed everything from how we meet, how we connect, how we learn, how we disagree, and everything in between. So that's us at Nendo.
So when you say you're curious, so what do you do? Are you a research company? Are you a...
So both a research company and a marketing agency in one. So that the research is very action oriented. You can do something with it, and we know what to do with it in many cases. And the marketing is insight led or inspired by actual research and spending time with people. And so that's where the two worlds collide, and that's how we serve the clients we have and the continent at large. So excited to, like, even right now, have some projects going on in Nigeria and just different parts of the continent and different languages, all solving for the same core question and curiosity of these phones, this internet, this social media we know of. What does it open up, and what opportunities does it unlock for us? And even Gen Z and the protests have been an area that's drawn quite a lot of our attention recently.
How so? Because, I mean, look at when, a number of decades ago, the mobile phone was, invented, created. And the thought was, well, I can then speak to somebody without having to go to a landed phone and, dial up whatever that was. But I can now move around with it and speak to whomever. And so the thought was that, I can pick up the phone and call somebody or send a message, and that's about the size of it. So what progression have we seen over time whereby it's dialing and, sending to now, today, where revolutions have been able to occur where, anything you think of it and it can happen because you have these gadgets in your hand. What kinds of things have we seen?
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. I think for us at Nendo, one of the things that has really been so curious for us to watch has been not just the global phenomenon we've seen with smartphones and the internet broadly, but now some of the local trends. And that's something we've tried to make a name for ourselves in, is not just saying where we are now and giving stats and data, but trying to make predictions and forecasts about what comes next. So one example from a few years ago was explaining how in the West, the way the internet would spread was through, at some point, this is gonna age me a bit, so but it was dial-up, right? That's literally how you would connect on a desktop, computer exclusively. And then if you follow how even the Western mindset of the internet was, it was all PC, right? So desktop computer based. And in Kenya, something fascinating happened with the proliferation of mobile phones. I mean, I had a SIM card before I had a phone. I'd literally go around to relatives and say, Uncle City, can I get your phone for 2 minutes? Because I'm trying to text a girl and see if she replied, and it's been weeks or whatever, and nothing might have been going on for me at the time. But what you found is that in Kenya particularly, the West had seen the email address as the social network. So this is why even Facebook, which started in 2004 and has over 17 million Kenyans today, it started exclusively on email. And then you come to today, or modern times, where it became that, at least in Kenya and Africa, the SIM card was the social network. So if you recall, if you had the misfortune of being robbed at some point, here, some of them had the presence of mind to say, let me give you your SIM card back. And that's because it literally, that little card had coded in the names of mom, dad, everyone else. And those are the days when people had to remember literally 5 to 7 to 8 to 9 phone numbers, which was my surprise, just now. But yeah, that's us. I think just looking to how there's been the evolution of the internet to where when you see something like WhatsApp or you name the social network now, a lot of it has built and taken a more African or even a more Kenyan shape over time, and that's been really exciting to watch over the years.
Looking at what's been happening in the country, so we know for a while that Kenyans who've gotten onto social media have had various things. It's community, it's places where people just come out. It's become the Mongedo. You go onto social media, and what you're doing is you start having conversations, various banter. It's banter, Kenyans versus Nigerians, or Kenyans versus CNN, or Kenyans amongst themselves. And it's just that banter. And then at some point, Kenyans start just making noise about what they're seeing and it's not working. And they were called keyboard warriors. So you get onto there and you're just ranting and doing nothing. And for a while, they were just dismissed as keyboard warriors. All you do is complain on social media. And when you're called to come out on the streets to join us in protest, people who are organizing protests, like Kina Boniface Mwangi and all, would come out, and the guys who are engaging with them on social media are not joining them on the streets. And they would still reach out to him on social media with their complaints. He became the people's watchman because they're raising issues. But he's like, all right, I'm going to sort out this issue. But people, do something. Then suddenly, earlier in the year, there's a young girl who is murdered and decapitated, and there's a protest that's organized, and people come out in their numbers on a Saturday at Jivanji, and they fill out the streets of Nairobi. And we hosted the organizers of that, and we're like, tell us, how did it happen? They just raised issues on social media, and they said, how about we just come out with numbers and say, no, we are saying no to femicide. And we asked ourselves, so what's the future of this? I mean, this year, it mobilized, it was a cause, it was a reason. So they've come out once, they're going to come out again. So what? And then reject finance bill starts. Take us through that. What you saw at Nendo, because I'm sure you were monitoring.
Yeah, exactly. And even just to zoom out a bit, I think this is just going to show you how the more things change, the more they stay the same. Let me take you to 2011. 2011, on the 28th of February, or just leading up to that time, was going to be several years following the signing of the peace accord at the time. And a hashtag called Kenya Feb 28th comes out. And the mandate was very simple. Wherever you are at 1 p.m. on the 28th of February, we want you to stop, and we want someone around you to start singing the national anthem. And this was just on Twitter, but it happened. And people started to see, wait, this just went from a hashtag and a call to action to where people in public places, downtown, CBD, you name it, but Matatu stages elsewhere, and people recorded it. Very grainy video. But that's just showing how far back this question goes. Obviously, we've seen now that some clubs, establishments, whatever, at midnight are playing the anthem or other things too. 2012, 3,000 medics are negotiating with the government. The then health minister says that they are crying for sweets. Peremende, he says, that irks them. They go out and a press conference is held that day and they start something called the Peremende movement.
The doctors.
Correct. And so now Kenyans online come behind them. And obviously we're seeing parallels now with Occupy, MOH, the doctor strike, and so on. And then you go to 2015, when you look for the phrase Occupy, because the three words of the current protests are reject, Occupy, free, and there's a few others.
All right.
And Occupy Playground, which is what you reference, right, is when Boniface Mwangi and other activists show up at the primary school on Langata Road, and the rest is history. And so I think if you just look, and there are these moments which are validating to Kenyans online that this is having an impact. I mean, even the Beyond Zero Marathon, right, from the former First Lady, if you look at the reason why it stopped, social media uproar. Those are the actual quotes. I was on one of the various websites. So this has been something where there's been a groundswell. But like you said, even from us with the data we saw off of the End Femicide movement, and that's one of the few times we can say where on Twitter, there's been more women speaking, at least about that issue. And even more recently, we've seen more women come back to Twitter. Because now known as X, it's not been a safe place for women historically. Very aggressive, a lot of sometimes attacks, abuse, or online violence. But from what we've seen, at least from the End Femicide KE conversation, that for us was a tipping point. So even in one of our reports, like you've said, we saw that as laying the foundation for everything we've seen now. And there was over, I think, 150,000 mentions, over 1 billion impressions online. This is End Femicide. And that now lays the groundwork.
What does that mean? 1 billion impressions.
Thank you. Good question. So it means that when you take, let's assume we each have 100 followers.
Okay.
Right? CT says something and we're all following each other. And I retweet it. I repost it or share it.
To your 100 followers.
Correct. Impressions is not how many people have seen it, how many humans have seen it. It's what they call the total opportunities to see. That's why it's a number so big and so elaborate, because it adds up all our numbers.
So CT's potential 100 people to see it, plus your potential 100.
Correct.
So the impressions there become 200.
Correct.
And does it include then the possibility of how CT's people could interact with Eric's people? Does it take that into consideration as well?
If Eric reshares.
Or if by virtue of the fact that you might be in the same spaces, that you would then meet each other?
Not necessarily. I think it's just a number to just talk about what's the full ceiling of potential people who might see this online, including old accounts, bots, spam, etc. So it tends to be not always the number to look for, but when you're looking at unique authors, which is something that we tracked as well, we saw about 28,000 unique authors, women. I think 17,000 men, and this was
What
End
does that
Femicide.
mean, unique authors?
So, unique authors is interesting because there's something on the internet called the 99-1 rule. It says that, I mean, even if you look at WhatsApp groups, right? You're not active in all of them. You go online, you're not as active. And so the majority of people are just lurkers. They actually are not keyboard warriors at all. They're keyboard observers.
They're called librarians.
Exactly. I like that. Librarians. Yes, there we go. And so because of that, they are the biggest contingent. Then you have a fraction who will like, share, subscribe. And then you have an even smaller one who will post and share. So if you say the four of us post, we're already in the extreme minority of people. So that's why unique authors matters, because how many people are everyone else resharing and observing?
Something else you said?
Yeah, I think now when you turn your eyes towards reject finance bill, Ruto must go, any of the other hashtags, Occupy Parliament, Occupy churches, it's been I think a very interesting groundswell. So for us, I think we've seen we did a report between the 12th of June and the end of June, and there were over 25 million tweets we saw on somewhere like TikTok, for instance, which I actually think, and we'd published this on Nendo's blog, we've been writing quite a lot, that's actually for me the game changer. It's not, and I have all the respect for X Spaces, I think it's actually, it's always had an outsized influence. But for me, the difference maker is TikTok. Not only because TikTok is significantly larger than X or Twitter, but because for Gen Z, the difference between them and everyone else is if you're on TikTok, you're used to looking at the camera and speaking. If you look at people's homes, offices, schools, they just take out a phone and they're speaking right to the camera. Some of us, the best we've done is point the camera at something.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at the protest, one of the most interesting things is it's not enough to be there. You need to have been recorded that you're there. And so you're handing your phone to somebody else saying, no, you have to get me. This is proof. I have to send
I was
social
part
proof.
of this.
Even if you look at the concert, when people are there with law enforcement, what are they doing? They're not just pointing the camera at them. They're walking up.
They're walking too.
And they're taking selfies, or most likely actually for TikTok videos, because they'll lay a soundtrack, etc. And TikTok has completely rewired everything we've known about YouTube, Instagram.
Sure.
In fact, for me, the rural and peri-urban part of TikTok, particularly vernacular, is the most underrated and sometimes the least understood.
So, as we're looking at this is interesting because I think for folks who are not even in this universe, because one could even say it's an alternate universe where all kinds of things are happening. So, for somebody who's on the periphery or even outside completely, the question for them is, how does somebody put something on X or on TikTok and in 30 seconds it is everywhere? Nobody had to put a billboard in the city to say there's going to be Occupy CBD on Tuesday. Nobody had to march through and do the vuvuzela or the megaphone, whatever, and announce that somebody put out a poster, somebody shared it, and then it went crazy. So for folks outside of this understanding, they're wondering, how do so many people get to know about this one thing so quickly and come out? How?
I think for me, it's a number of things. It's the perfect storm, I think, of things. But one of the biggest ones is just the concept of social proof. I'll wait until I see where you stand. And then I see on my WhatsApp status people talking about this. I see tweets. I see Facebook updates. In some cases, the thing with TikTok is that it's been designed to be the most spreadable. So even if you have you've never joined TikTok, it's in WhatsApp groups, it's on LinkedIn, it's on Insta, it's everywhere. And that's the idea. It's spread that way to sort of catch like wildfire. And so we've seen a number of, I'd say, both legacy activists and professionals, from IT professionals who've said, I'm going to donate my time to help explain this. And so we're going to build a chatbot, a GPT.
Yep.
That's going to help you interact with the bill, not a 42-page PDF. You're going to see certain people who, again, like when I go to now TikTok, you're just looking at essentially a bedroom, balcony, office, you name it, classroom, and they're looking at the camera and they're saying, this is how I feel about this way I feel about the state of the country, the economy. And a few of those videos, honestly, for me, it's unspeakable. I was sharing this data, and every time I say it, I can't believe my ears, that there's been over 1 billion views, 1 billion views between the 12th of June and today, when you look at reject the finance bill and its various phrases, and Ruto must go as well. And it's crazy to my mind, because there's not many other places you'd ever hear of that. But you go back to Twitter, one of the biggest ways people are just expressing their protest is just sharing. I might never leave my office job, but I see something by you, and I've been so surprised. I'm seeing 1,000 retweets in 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. It's even during elections, it's not something we've seen. So I think, to your point, there's different levels of participation, and one of the biggest ones is people are saying, I'm going to make my stand clear, recognize and appreciate those content creators. And then what happened was, after the first day, the very, very first set of protests, when people saw it on the news, so that people really showed up and saw people actually taking those videos, they said, I can't miss out on this moment. I have to be there. So I record it too, either through what I'll type, but most likely the videos. And it's been a ball of sort of a snowball effect, where the social proof adds pressure and validates that we should do it, even with what we saw with the taxi companies yesterday.
Yeah.
So is it about people feeling FOMO and not wanting to be left out, and so joining a movement? Or is it a response to something? Because if you look at the previous examples you've given, right, the end femicide was a reaction to something and a very emotive issue, particularly for the very many women who were mobilizing. Girls, young girls are being killed, and you can't explain the reason why. Is it hate? Is it a gender violence? What's planning? And so people are reacting to this and coming out to express and say, no, this has got to stop. If you look a couple of years back, there was the My Dress, My Choice campaign. A woman is stripped and then others react to this and they say, no. And they go mobilize and they come out and say, my dress, my choice. So there's that sort of rebellion to something that they feel that they are being under attack. Even the doctors, if you look at that Peremende movement, they are responding to the CS and the minister. The minister has come out and, basically just reduced their concerns to Peremende. So you're reacting to it. This time, what were people pushing back on? Or was it different?
I think it was the finance bill and really the state of the economy, because you have young people now who are underemployed, unemployed. In fact, there's been some interesting studies recently, and I think you had one of the guests here from Odipo Dev about how, Gen Z, as people 28, I always have to say the age, because obviously Gen Z now is an ideal and is a state of mind, is far bigger than an age group. Actually, just maybe it's a pet peeve. I don't like when we say Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, etc. I think what's more helpful, and I'm going to leave this point, is to look at which president someone came of age under. That's more helpful in the Kenyan context, because certain things were happening with media and freedom and expression and authority and technology, as opposed to just the US-based, I'm a boomer, I'm a Gen X, I'm this.
And coming of age is at what age exactly?
I mean, again, I'm no expert here. I would say towards your teen years, when you're understanding authority, sort of going through your pubescent or puberty years. That would be my take. Is that
so? Now we say like the Uhuru generation, the Kibaki generation.
Yes, please.
The Moi generation.
That's correct. And obviously, we know that President Moi's reign was one of the longer ones.
The Malcolm X generation. What was his name? Malcolm who?
X.
No, that guy, the governor. Let's take a break. It's 27 minutes to 9. Our guest this morning is Mark Kaigo. Mark is the founder and CEO of Nendo, and this is a company that does a lot of research and marketing, and he's here to break it down to us. Nendo have been looking at numbers and what's happening in the social space. We're saying moving from social media to social change and how this generation has done it. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Business news with Spice FM.
This is the business news brought to you by Stanbic Bank. I'm Edwin.
Listen, each and every Saturday right here, pure entertainment, low vibe.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Straight Up Show.
That if you're watching from home, weka kiti kando jamani, it's about time. We're standing out in Joe that we made it this one. Listen.
You already know, they call me Joe the Best, and Joe the Best always remain to be my name.
Lord. So remember each and every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Nikubwa sana. Ndani ya KTN home.
Habari njema, mchezo mpya kushinda hela umewasili. Tazama Utuzwe ni mchezo rahisi na njia haraka ya kushinda hela ukitumia simu yako. Kuwa mmoja wa mamia ya washindi kila siku. Jishindie kuanzia shilingi 20,000. Ni rahisi. Deposit kuanzia shilingi 20 hadi 99 kwenye paybill number 145656. Account number KTN. Shinda sasa hivi. Draws na washindi kila hour. Kumbuka, deposit kuanzia 20 bob hadi 99 bob kwa paybill number 145656. Account number KTN. Na unaweza kujishindia hadi 1,300.
Gigiri Lion Villa is the epitome of luxury.
We have all the categories of rooms, starting from the superior and the standard. We have the deluxe, we have the junior suite, we have the executive and the presidential. When you walk around the property, it's so inviting, quite intimate, turning this small space into a luxury villa.
Let's do this.
Jonathan Jackson is the founder and chairman of the Lordship Group.
88 Nairobi is a legacy project for me. I bought this plot a long time ago, and I didn't quite know what
to do with it.
To do with it.
Yeah. What's the maybe 2-3 things that have caused you lots of sleepless nights in these projects, most especially this one?
There's always problems with the administration. That's frustrating at times when you get stopped, and there's no reason for being stopped. It's only because someone wants some chai.
Born in Kenya, he is the true definition of building and investing in one's country to make it a better place.
Never give up. Never give up. And I'm sure you've heard this from a lot of people. I've been technically bankrupt 3 times in my life.
On What's Your Story, everyone has a story.
Mr. DJ mziki tunangoja, mchelewa mziki tunangoja. Umetuweka na mziki inashika kutoka kwa kanisa na paka kila boda. Uko kwa Yesu ni full vibe, vibe. Uko kwa Yesu ni full vibe, vibe. Uko kwa Yesu ni full vibe, vibe, vibe. I say together. Vibe, 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 vibe.
Let's look at that all the way through, coming in from Mlongo out towards Cabanas, and then through Nyayo Stadium Junction through towards Haile Selassie. We're not having anything here today, so it looks like it's going to be easy streets. We'll talk all the same. Spice FM, KE on X, hashtag The Situation Room.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, 21 minutes to 9. Our guest, Mark Kaigwa, is still here.
So here we are. And essentially, we're saying that with the progression of technology, that when it was just what people thought social media was, fun time, take pictures, talk about vacation and what you're eating and this, that, the other thing, that we've taken it to a point whereby we've actually used it to a point whereby you can talk on matters governance. You can talk about shifting attitudes and behavior. And we're saying that that's still not even scratching the surface of what this technology or this new space can actually do. So far cry from what it was in the very beginning. What would we say would, from your point of view, when you look at data and its collection and its information and what it shares, what could actually help towards solutions, right? Because we know how people are engaged. Could the folks who are being asked something of, the folks who are being engaged at that level, use this same data and information to make change on their side?
I think so. I think for me, one of the opportunities right now is to reconsider, as hard as this is, it's easy for me to say, but government as usual, especially when it comes to communications. I think something that my team and I have tracked over successive administrations is this idea that there was a mindset that Facebook and Twitter and any of these online platforms, up until TikTok, which was the most different, were just essentially pictorials. I was here. I met so-and-so. And that is basically what they reduced it to, essentially almost like a magazine that just has an infinite amount of pages, as opposed to the social part of social media, which is discussion, debate, public participation. We have seen a couple sitting governors go live, say on TikTok, and start to take questions. And in a way, almost you see somebody say, "Give me a minute," or see so and so. I know you're watching, and pass that through. And that for me is rewiring the expectation. This is a year ago, so this is not even with the groundswell of what's happening now. So I think that government as usual question is one. Two is the public participation question. I think we saw it with even the way that people are making it dead simple to participate. They're saying, look, you don't have to leave your seat. I'll write you the email. I'll get you the email address. I'll explain exactly what you need to do. All you need to do is hit send. Or I'll give you the date and the time. And if you show up there, whether you are a lawyer or just a person of good faith, and so that's, people have basically eliminated some of the obstacles to where whether virtually you want to participate or contribute or give, you can do that. But now for the government side, for elected representatives, they also have to unlearn at this time and say, I'm going to discuss with my constituents, even those who aren't my constituents, because clearly my phone number is out there now, and I'm probably being greeted in Salimiwad now and again, depending on how I vote and how I act.
Yeah.
When you look at the extremities that have appeared with the greetings, as we call it, yes, it's abhorrent. It's not something that one would wish on even one's worst enemy. But there is a flip side to it. It is an expression of what people have felt, or what people have endured, or what they've experienced negatively over a period of time. The times in which we live in, this communication age, has afforded people the ability to express yourself in ways that previously they could not. And remember, up until just last month, many of the individuals we speak of who are in authority or political positions were, or they themselves consider themselves, untouchable. Now, the communication has been, you are actually touchable. In case you didn't understand, let us make you understand that you are touchable. We not only have your number, we have you profiled. Now, we were talking the other day about the issues of a new cabinet and the vetting. We want to see how this is going to take place, because one, the generation that you belong to and your understanding of the tools that are available to you for education and other purposes, mischief and all, can provide an avenue for anybody who is elected, selected by those in power to be vetted in a manner that people have never been vetted before in the country. So that a name is mentioned, say, okay, this is the person, okay? Says he has one wife, it's 5. Okay? He says he has served in this thing. Actually, there is a problem with this person that was never resolved. When he was headmaster of this school, for some strange reason, but he came there when there were 10 cows, and when he left, there were only 2. It's something that is still being worked into. Meaning, there are going to be outcomes to this that nobody had foreseen. But the thing that will be underlying this is accountability. But then my question, who then do this group of people that we loosely refer to as Gen Zs, who holds them to account?
That's a great question. I think there's no easy answer, because I would say that because, as it's been described, it is leaderless, partyless, tribeless, it still has the potential unless it organizes in a form. And I know people have rejected the concept of organizing or having some sort of structure, because that's, how leaders can be co-opted. Indeed, there is, so I don't deny that. But
there also is a leadership.
But it is fracturing in on itself, if you've noticed, with questions of, but did you get paid? And why did you participate in this way? And why wasn't I invited?
Mark,
yes.
We have a structured leadership. It's called the executive. We have a structured leadership called the legislature.
No, I'm saying of Gen Z.
Oh, no. I'm going there. I'm simply saying all leadership is fractured. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I see.
The dysfunctionality is not the system, it's the human beings and the way we go about our business. And for the Gen Zs, it's a learning opportunity.
It is.
They've never been here before.
True.
Okay? So they're here now. So these ramblings, this is the learning process taking place as we observe and as we watch. There'll be disagreements, there'll be fallouts, they'll be calling out, you are not our leader, go away first of all. Who elected you? Okay? All that will happen. It must happen, because this is how people then find a stable working setup where they don't have to agree, but they can at least accept. But it must take place.
That's right. I mean, I think some people are taking the opportunity almost as I mean, there's a few broad things I think that are interesting to see. Is also this generational surprise like you've said with kusalimiana, which, for listeners who might not be aware, is a sort of a phrase that means greetings. But what we're actually talking about, to be quite clear, is sometimes what's called doxing, which is I take your personal information, including your phone number, and I put it in a public place with potentially irate people and say, go greet this person. And those greetings, from what you've seen online, tend to be abusive, sometimes vulgar. In fact, what's curious is people are surprised just how upset or just how vulgar and the type of colorful language there is on X Spaces and all sorts of online meeting fora, because I think when we just look at how liberal this particular online generation is, it's fascinating. In 2019, there's a sort of a one-page guide where Nendo published and said, look, these are if you give a Kenyan 100 megabytes or 100 gigabytes, now when you zoom out, not because I might say things and you'll say, I don't do that at all. It's now when we look at us in aggregate, you see that there's a liberalism that's there from actually even right now when you look at the topmost search things of the last few weeks since this Reject Finance Bill conversation started, sports betting continues to dominate. So what that says is that as much as everything else is happening, Kenyans, correct, and there's a questions of instant gratification, of risk and reward, of sadly even this idea of people seeing that is their potentially their ticket, out economically, which is quite problematic when you think of online, gambling in that way. But there's also the Euros. But I think the second thing was, I think on social media, is these views that when I watch these online shows, etc., I hear very colorful language, I will express it even when greeting others, even when checking my fellow colleagues. And so the language, even of various activists and prominent people, no one has been afraid to talk in language that would not be appropriate on this microphone or any sort of public fora. But it's come to define the exhaustion, the angst, the anger, the feeling and the mood. But there's no leader, you're right, and people continue to touch the extremes.
It's all about cultures, because I grew up in a culture at the coast where people would normal greeting among friends would be an insult. No, sincerely. Someone greets you in a way that if you're not familiar with that way of greeting, you wonder, why is this person insulting me? And they're actually greeting you, and they're very happy to see you. Yes. So there are words they would use that ordinarily you would cringe. It is so normal, you actually get shocked. But in this instant, coming from the background that many Kenyans come from, there are words that are not supposed to be uttered in public. Okay? They are considered disrespectful. Okay? However, let me just say, sometimes maybe with generationally, the words are not meant to be disrespectful because that's how they communicate every day. But to an older person, it will be disrespectful. But then when you throw in just the utter angst that seems to have built up over time, I would say it is a safe outlet for people to actually express it. It is a better outlet because there are other avenues that people can express the angst which are far, far, far more destructive.
True.
And one should take note, because if it's on the increase, all it tells you is that people who ordinarily did not feel safe to express what they feel now feel they can. So you get to hear more and more and more of it. It will reach a plateau. It will. But for now, as people realize that it is possible for you to express yourself, they will express themselves.
It will rise.
It will rise. Yes.
Where is the negative threat to this? Okay. Let's give it the angle of Cambridge Analytica and such, where these social media places are then used to fuel a certain feeling and a certain mood to drive a certain agenda. So is it possible, and how would you be able to pick out, for example, if some of these hashtags and keywords are being amplified specifically to a certain direction, certain conversations are being amplified more than others, so that you get the public into a certain mood and then you're driving them into a certain direction. That fear has been expressed. Is it a possibility? Is it a possibility that, when people are just getting online there and they're engaging and they're participating and they're, going into the form and they're saying, this is the language you're using now, and they're picking up the language, they're actually being manipulated?
No, I mean, you raise probably one of the single greatest threats of the time right now. And I think even for the team and I at Nendo, we're doing a webinar tomorrow at 4 just on Zoom, just to try to unpack both, there's gains made, there's threats that are still there. When you think of the unseen hand behind a lot of this, it is what I'd call the algorithms, right? Which are these phrases used to say, if the four of us each search for a particular phrase right now, we might each see, even on Twitter, for example, different results because they're tailored around us. And so there's almost like an arbiter there who's deciding, and what do I want you to see, and is this going to get you riled up? Sadly, many of these organizations, they thrive, and their profit motive is, am I going to show you enough for you to keep in that trance or days of scrolling? And in some cases, that's me working you up. That's me getting you upset. That's me, sort of getting you, just
riling you up.
Exactly. And so that for me continues to be a threat. But on the other hand, there's also the question of censorship, or what some people are calling shadow banning, which says that, they're not, this hashtag should be trending and it's been removed or withdrawn. So I'd say right now, in terms of other actors, we have seen that in the past. I think during the 2017 general election, Nendo was doing the similar type of social media listening and tracking. And there were attack ads, right, that were there on YouTube, targeted at different people with different inclinations or views of candidates. So there's a whole library and quite a lot published about this. So that's when now it emerged, for example, that Cambridge Analytica and other, firms were here. And those attack ads are US sort of style, which are very aggressive, very intense, really playing to your fears or just your own psyche in many ways in terms of its manipulation. So that threat is there. I think, as CT said, some of these extremities, there are some checks and balances. So, for example, when people see you've had this hard line and you're softening, ever since this moment, okay, we're beginning to doubt you and look for a new voice to engage with. So I feel like it's somewhat self-correcting in that there's almost a hyper-vigilance because there's no leader. So people are setting some sort of imaginary margins and saying, if you cross this, we might write you off, but there's still the vulnerability someone would take over and carry it.
That margin that's being set is on a certain direction. Is if you are radical, you are welcome here. If you become less radical, we kick you out of here. So there's a just continuous radicalization, like, you are expected.
It's feeding into itself.
Yeah.
But radicalism to what end?
And that's the thing.
That was very hard to say, I think, because we don't have an end in sight. The question is, there was videos yesterday saying,
you must have an end in sight.
But somebody said yesterday, don't go to the streets today because look at all the gains that have been made. And yet others now are like, no. Some people actually in the comments were saying, no, look, you're a sellout. And some people are like, okay, he has a point, but because we've cast some aspersions on you, we're going to continue this, even though, like you're saying, the question is to what end? And at this point, it's not clear.
Actually, sometimes you act your way into reason, not reason your way into action. The process that we're seeing are bring out outcomes that probably even the protesters had not figured out. But here they are.
Right.
Now, where I would say the protests and the continuance has value, if you have the sort of impunity that we've seen in our political leadership and how entrenched it has been, that thing is not going to go away because of 2 protests. It will not. Because even as there is, and this is how they consider a threat to their existence, they will regroup and they will reinvent themselves. They'll speak the language that they think is acceptable, because I'm seeing politicians falling over themselves to side with the Gen Zs. Literally. It's a good political move. But the point is this. Right now, at this moment in time, when it is clear that we are beginning to see changes that people have hankered for and have asked for the longest possible time, are we saying that it will go uncheckered? No, it will be checkered. It will be checked. It will be interfered with. And even now, as you tell us what you're saying, I dare say that to me sounds like a form of interference. Because, yes, it is. Running interference doesn't necessarily mean that somebody disagrees with you. They agree with you, but they gently take you onto a different path. somebody brings in a new idea. So there'll be so many ideas that even the purpose for which you started the entire process, somewhere along the line gets lost.
That's correct.
You've been checkered completely. So it will happen. The state doesn't sit back and watch what it has built and what it has enjoyed simply taken away. They don't sit back.
Yeah, because it's power play. It's the constitution was that one. You know, it was saying sovereignty belongs to the people, and the people shall decide how they are governed, and the people shall own the government. And the government can just sit back and say,
the people what own what? Wait a moment. You mean we won't be able to tell these people what to do and how to do it? Huh? And then they can even question the way we steal from them. No, this one, no, we can't allow this.
So, Mark, how can then this turn into like positive going into the future? Like you said, there's increased public participation, civic education and awareness. How can all these then come together from the various quarters? Maybe developers coming up with ways, like you said, ChatGPT that does this. What City was saying, how do we start vetting people online? How do we get this information without necessarily infringing on people's privacies? How can this be used for good? Like you said, it's social media to social change for social good.
That's right.
How can we get into the social good part?
I think that's happening now. I think the number of people who've turned their attention, and for example, I'll say this not with any, just speaking plainly from the data, there are people who have lived in let me call it a glass ceiling online, or somewhat of relative obscurity, right? I come, I post, but I've never been able to really grow. And in this moment, because of their profession, because of their background, they have become a voice. And they've realized part of what made me become this voice was being an activist, giving of my time and my talents towards this. So you now have people acting as sort of an online auditor general. And I'm surprised, where they're even looking up people who voted a particular way they agreed with just 2 weeks ago. And now they're going saying, let me look at your whole record. Let me look at your development agenda and what you did. And coming back to just frame it that way with checks and balances. Regardless of how I think things settle, I don't think that's going away. People are talking about recalling members of parliament, right? I think that starts some checks and balances on performance and results. So these, I don't think you can squeeze the toothpaste back in the tube, even if you set up a very strong, contingent that is, say, pro-government. This part is literally rewarding people with likes and shares. And you have to understand, this is rewiring neural pathways of people where they're like, I love what I'm seeing for myself. And I might be able to flip this and become famous or infamous, right? Some people are even loving the infamy on its own, where they're saying, I will be the voice that you don't like. But what you don't know is when you express your disdain and disagreement, I actually feed off that. It works for me and spreads my message. So the good thing is, I think we've seen civic engagement at all-time highs, and we'll see if it translates offline, which it already has.
Mark Kaigwa, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing all that information. We'll invite you again for when you have a bit more. Mark Kaigwa is the founder and CEO of Nendo. He's been here. We've been talking about how social media has been used for social change. And you're asking, is it going to lead into social good into the future? Keep it here for more and more of that. Remember, www.jubileeinsurance.com. If you want to get the best health insurance that suits you, that's where to go. Start there. Good morning.